Hey, here's 5 spiritual tools to help you cope with the news. Here's my hot take to start. Everything in the whole world that's going on right now is going to be fine. How you doing, by the way, with current events? I don't even know exactly when you're watching this. You might be riding high right now, or you might be miserable, and I bet you were the opposite a couple of years ago. Stuff is always going on that's stressful in the world, and it can actually be pretty demoralizing. I think there's a lot of people I know personally, or people that I know who knows someone that is just whatever's going on, they're thinking so much about stuff that's happening in politics, culture, I don't know what other kind of stuff happens, sports, well, I don't know. That doesn't count. They're so wrapped up in what's going on, it makes them get sick, and it makes them lose their will to live, and it makes them miserable. I'm here to say you don't got to be miserable. You don't have to feel like that, because what you don't realize is everything's going to be fine. What I want to give you here is a spiritual method for approaching current events that is going to make it so that you're pretty chill about it and optimistic regardless of what's going on. Because, yeah, things change. Different things are happening in the world. People are doing stuff. But there's permanent spiritual principles that's just always happening. It's like E equals MC squared. That's always happening. So is this. Principle 1, divine providence leads to a good end. This, like the other ones, is taken from Emanuel Swedenborg, because if you're going to go big or go home, I think this is the most potent spiritual material to help you with stuff like this. Peace has in it confidence in the Lord, that he directs all things and provides all things, and that he leads to a good end. So the divine, the big plan, is in everything. Not just like some stuff generally, but everything, every detail. And what it's doing is not saying everything's fine right now, nothing's ever going to hurt, or nothing is going to go the way that it shouldn't, but eventually it's going to turn out all right. That the right kind of steps and roots and things are being laid so that it turns out all right in the end. And yes, I'm talking about, in a lot of cases, in the afterlife. I'm sorry, but you have to bring the afterlife into this. Consciousness survives the death of the body. If you don't have that, you lost half the equation. It's like you go in a book and you stop at the worst part of the book. If you just look at the physical world and you see, look at all this unfairness. Some people die when they're babies. Some people live miserable lives. That's just the very beginning of everyone's life, because there's an afterlife. The plans come to fruition there. So I'm just saying, otherwise, of course it's going to be miserable, because it's like you go into the 10th chapter of the book and all the bad guys done all the bad stuff and this is miserable, and then the book ends. But when you're reading a book, you're never fazed by things getting worse and worse, because it's going to resolve. Everything's going to resolve. Everything is going to work out fine. So whatever headline you read today, yep, that's happening. And in the end, everyone involved, everything that's happening is going to turn out fine, because that's just how it's an immutable law of reality. Principle number 2, this is the explanation for why evil people succeed in life. I feel like one thing that stresses you out, or stresses me out, is when I feel like these bad people are winning. These bad people are getting away with it. I don't like with sports. If I don't know the sport and I don't really care about the teams, right away if I'm watching a game and one team does something that's dirty or that I feel like is immoral, or they taunt the opponent or something, my loyalty is locked in. That's the bad team. This other team's got to do good, and now I'm really invested in that happening. It's distressing to feel like people that have bad intentions are getting ahead. But people with bad intentions do get ahead, and they will continue to get ahead, but that's actually part of the plan. Before I illustrate for you how that works and how divine providence that we mentioned before uses even evil people to do things that are ultimately good, understand, you don't know who is evil. Everybody has people, public figures especially, that they think that person's evil. You don't know. You don't know people's motives. Actually, to say, I know for sure what your motives are and that you have an evil intent and an evil soul, can't do that. It's a spiritual judgment. And not doing the spiritual judgment thing will free you up. Watch, it's more distressing to believe, I know this person's evil, than it is to say, well, you never know what's going on deep in someone's heart. That said, some people are evil, meaning these people are driven by selfish, materialistic purposes. They don't care what they're doing to other people. They don't have the welfare of their other human beings in mind. They're evil, but actually, I'm telling you, God can use those evil people to accomplish more productive things than good people would do. I'm serious. This is from Swedenborg's Divine Providence 250. Get ready. This is going to be a paragraph here. This is Swedenborg talking about how God governs the universe. I need to say something about why divine providence allows people who are irreligious at heart to be raised to high rank and to become wealthy. Irreverent or evil people can be just as useful as devout or good people. In fact, they can be more ardent about it because they are focused on themselves and the good they do and regard advancement as intrinsically useful. The stronger their self-love grows, then, the more intense is their passion for service for the sake of their own renown. Man, there was that old song by Jack Johnson. It's like, where'd all the good people go? I've been changing channels. I don't see them on the TV show. Okay, now we're going to get sued for copyright and general crimes against humanity. But if you look out in the positions of power, it seems like people are not that good. Why? It's because a lot of the time to go and put in the work and have that arduous slog to get famous or to get powerful in politics or whatever, most of us don't want to do that. But people who have this really intense ego, they'll put in the work because they really want that prestige or they really want that fame. And what divine providence does, so what God reaching out and taking care of the whole human race does, is he'll use evil people's evil desire to be powerful and adored and use that to make them do things that help the rest of us, that help the human race function, because they want the position and the admiration, but the net side effect is that passion of theirs is turned into they're working around the clock to do things that actually do end up benefiting all of us. The stronger their self-love grows, then, the more intense is their passion for service for the sake of their own renown. Devout or good people do not have this kind of fire unless it is subtly fueled by rank. So all I'm trying to say is don't be stressed if you feel like, oh, the bad team is winning. That adds to your overall stress from news intake, and it will slowly chip away at your ability to be a good, productive person. Divine providence is using them out of love for the rest of us to accomplish certain things. The person doesn't have to be good in order for things that come from their life to be good. We all know, we've all loved songs or shows or something that were created and starred in by people that turned out to be terrible. There's a million recent scandals that this person who made this beautiful stuff is actually horrible, and they did. Good things can come from people that are evil. And the reason that is because, again, divine providence is working behind the scenes to make sure good is brought out of everything. Principle number 3, you got to know what it's all about. You have to know what the main goal is. If you look out at the world, you're trying to think, what's the point of this? What is this set up to do? There's a particular aim that divine providence has in the way that it guides events. And it's not, like, is everything fair right now? It's not, is the team that I like in the large sense winning. This is what divine providence wants to do. The unceasing effort of the Lord's divine providence is to deliver us from our evils. That's the main goal. Like, that's the most important thing. Human beings are amazing things. Can be really great, but also can be really dumb and evil. I'm just saying, go look out at the way people treat each other. There's a darkness in the human heart, and each one of us has got the tendency toward different kinds of things that are really bad. And the most important thing is to get rid of that. All the other problems in the world, any kind of scarcity, any kind of clash between people, any kind of waste or inefficiency, all of it boils down to selfishness and materialism in people. If you fix that, then everything else will get fixed. So that's the thing divine providence is after. It is guiding events so that evils can be removed out of individual people. People can be reformed. People can turn good. Christmas Carol, when Scrooge turns good, he was evil and he turned good. There's a million other, I don't know, all I can think about is Christmas Carol. That's the main point. That's what this thing is set up to do. And evils cannot be set aside unless they come to light. Swedenborg compares it to an infection in a wound. And if that remains sealed in, you die from it. But if it can be opened up, even though it's gross and there's a lot of work to be done, you can get healed. So it is with each of us individually. Sometimes we have to come close to or even do things that are harmful in order for us to understand, I have that in me. Oh, I lost my temper again. That's got to go. It's the same thing with the human race. We as we see these atrocities emerge, we understand, oh, that's that's in us. How do we never have that happen again? How do we get rid of that? How do we face that, confront that, reject that from the human race? And kind of like piggybacking on that, it seems like we're talking about very heavy stuff, and piggybacking is very silly. So maybe not piggybacking, following, caboosing, that is the fourth principle, which is that things have to go all the way bad sometimes. I think we feel like there's this thing in the world that's happening that's not good and it's getting worse. Why isn't God stopping this now? And it's really tough. Yeah, it's really tough to not feel like that. At times, though, something has to get to its tipping point before we can get in at the root problem. I'll give you what seem like frivolous examples. Again, when you have a disease in you and you have this fever that makes you miserable, the fever has to really get up and really get high to where you can actually turn the tide on that infection and reject it from the body. In our individual lives, there's this thing that happens called spiritual crises. People have called this the dark night of the soul. And that's where stuff falls apart for you. You have to get to the point where you're in despair, where you're at your wit's end. And that's when God comes in and can lift you up to the next level. Like an ego death, some people might call that. It's like the human body. If you're going to build a muscle, you actually have to tear that thing, break it down so that it can come back stronger. By the way, God is not exempt from this stuff. You might be thinking, oh, he's going to assign all this to us and we have to deal with it, and he doesn't. Jesus went through the same thing. Garden of Gethsemane, when he was sweating blood and saying, I don't want to do this. According to Swedenborg, that was him hitting that same bottom. The crucifixion hitting the same bottom. That happens sometimes in the world. There's something that we need to expunge from the human race, and it's got to get all the way. People have to really get unmasked before we can deal with it. So sometimes things seem like it's getting worse. That's part of the process. It doesn't mean that we're totally off the rails. Principle number 5 is you got to remember the heart of providence. When you're looking at how things are going in the world, yeah, there's a lot of bitter pills to swallow, but what's it all for? Where is it all going in particular? And where's it going to end up for you? The very heart of providence, though, is that we should be in some particular place in heaven, or in some particular place in the divine heavenly person, and therefore in the Lord. This is what happens for people whom the Lord can lead to heaven. Since the Lord foresees this, he also constantly provides for it, with the result that all of us who are allowing ourselves to be led to heaven are being prepared for our own places in heaven. So for you, everything that's happening in your life is contributing to you becoming a certain kind of person that can have a certain kind of place in heaven. I told you we're talking about the afterlife in heaven. The place you have in heaven has to do with how it is that you can help the rest of the human race in a way that nobody else can. Think about everything you've been through, all the scarring things, all the joyful things, all the confusing things, all the exciting things. It's making you who you are. It's slowly ridding you of the stuff that's negative or evil to let that who you should be actually come through. It is making you wiser. It is making you more empathetic, more altruistic, and that's going to end up all coming in handy. There's a very particular plan. Like, think of God as like sitting there, hand on your shoulder, and like, I know this is tough, but look at where we're headed. I'm going to put you right there. And that, the right there that I'm talking about is the happiest possible existence that you can have. And he's doing that with every single person in the world. So every news event that you read, triumph or tragedy, every person in there, nobody's just collateral. Everybody in there, God is like, I got you. I'm going to make sure that in the end, you're happier in the long run because this happened, which might seem miraculous, but maybe that's what the real miracle is that no matter what happens to anyone at any time, it will contribute to their eternal happiness. God will bring the goodness out of it. I'm not saying that it's not terrible right now. I'm not trying to say it's not painful right now. I'm not trying to say this is how it should be. The divine providence, as Swedenborg describes it, this is God making the best of a bad situation. Everybody makes choices. I know you've heard the free will argument before, but it's true. Everybody gets to decide what they do with their life. And the more we decide to do things that are evil, that has all these cascading effects, and that makes the whole situation a lot messier and a lot more painful and a lot more tragic. However, providence can handle it. It cannot get rid of all the pain in the moment, but it can absolutely make it so it works out well in the end. So I'm not asking you in this to change your approach to the world. That's outside the purview of this video. I'm not trying to say don't go and try to change anything because everything's going to be fine. Actually, us changing things is how providence can make the world better and make us get to these goals with less pain and less suffering. So keep doing that. That's good. But I'm asking you to change your attitude towards stuff, because it doesn't help anyone if you are devastated by everything that's going on. That doesn't help you be part of the solution. I'm not saying it's easy to do all the time, but next time you're reading headlines or you're doom scrolling and you're looking at how can this be happening? Remember these 5 principles. We can look at this spiritually and go through life in a little bit more zen and maybe more of a positive impact. And maybe like a little more clarity. We're seeing not just the appearance, but the actual means behind it. We're seeing the big picture in a way that we couldn't before.